This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We've all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network. And today we are going to talk about exiting and building from limiting beliefs and unhealthy mindsets. Please, first off, let me know if you can hear me, if I'm coming through okay. I'm using a new microphone, so we're trying out some new things. But I just want to dive right into it. So in case there's any issues with the audio, please let me know as I get going. Some of you might be familiar with the term exit and build. I have t-shirts with the phrase exit and build. I wrote a book called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, where I discuss exit and build, and I'm going to outline what that means in terms of the original meaning in my book. But also today I want to expand upon that. For those who understand my work and who've been on this journey with me for a while, you know that I highly value our state of mind, our state of spirit, our state of heart, and I fully believe that spirituality, internal healing, trauma healing is an instrumental part of creating a better world. That's really what the Conscious Resistance, my website, the network that you're listening to right now, is all about. Yes, I use journalism to try to expose corruption and darkness, and I use books to write about these things and documentaries to expose the crimes and public speeches to share that information. But ultimately, it all comes down to working on the internal struggle, with what I call the struggle against our own internal tyrant, our doubts, fears, insecurities, and limiting beliefs which can hold us back and keep us from being the best version of ourselves. So with that said, today's video, and it's been a while since I've done one of these, where we're just going to go stream of consciousness. I have no script. I have no anything written in front of me. It's just been an idea that's been percolating in my head for the last month at least, that I've been wanting to share this. So I hope those of you who hear it will really take it in, and I trust that everybody who's meant to hear it will hear it. So first of all, let's define what exit and build is. Exit and build is something that I wrote about in 2019 and first published in January 2020 in my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. And this is a strategy that is inspired by the work of Samuel Konkin, who I've written a lot about of my work over the years, and his idea of agorism and counter-economics. And counter-economics and agorism are basically it's the root of a lot of the beliefs that many people are looking towards now. The idea of building parallel systems, alternative economies, counter-economies, underground economies, exiting from the slavery systems and building something new. So I took inspiration from Samuel Konkin and his work, and I tried to kind of update the terminology and really bring it into the digital era, if you will. And so I started to call it exit and build in my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. And I wrote about it first in terms of moving, physical location. So let's say that you're an individual who lives in an area where there isn't a lot of freedom and the government's passing a lot of anti-freedom laws that don't align with your values and principles. You might decide, you know what, I'm going to exit from this whatever, maybe it's a Republican stronghold or it's a Democratic stronghold or whatever. It's not to your liking, and you say, I'm going to exit from that place and I'm going to build elsewhere. I'm going to move to a different city or a different town, a different country that is more amenable to my beliefs and my values, right? So that's one form of exiting the building that I wrote about in the book. And in fact, we saw that a lot the last couple of years during COVID-19 '84, where people were exiting from Canada, people were exiting from Australia, exiting from Germany, exiting from the UK and even the United States, and building in Mexico, going to Mexico to start a new life, or at least to get away from the insanity for a little while, you start a new life. So that's exit and build in one terms of just physical location. In the book, I also wrote about how exit and build also applies to not just physical location, but in terms of exiting from philosophical systems. So let's say you don't like the fact that it's recently been revealed that JP Morgan Chase helped Epstein launder some of his money through their accounts, which more than likely had to do with trafficking of children. So you decide, you know what, that's it. I'm done with Chase Bank. I'm taking my money out. I'm going to exit from that system, that slavery system that doesn't align with my values, and I'm going to build elsewhere. So then you put your money into a local credit union, or you stuff it under the mattress, or you buy a safe, or you invest it in crypto and precious metals and whatever you're into. The point is, you're exiting from that system and you're building or supporting those who are building something better. I'll give you one more example. A lot of people have started to homeschool and unschool and world school the last couple of years to get out of the insanity of the COVID measures. So you're exiting from a system which doesn't align with your values, which is either teaching your children propaganda, trying to force jabs on them, et cetera, whatever your particular values are. You exit from that system and then you build something better. So in this case, maybe you start homeschooling your parents, or excuse me, homeschooling your kids, or you combine up with other parents and you form a homeschooling pod, and together you guys hire a tutor that teaches your kids every week. There's all kinds of ways you could go about it. But the point is, you're exiting again from the system that doesn't represent your values, in this case, the public schooling indoctrination center, and you're building or supporting those who are building other systems in terms of world schooling, homeschooling, unschooling, forest schooling, nature schooling. I mean, there's so many really cool ideas out there now, right? So that's the idea of exit and build. It can apply to physical location. It can apply to different systems that you're trying to get out of. But what today's video is focused on, and which I really hope you will tune into and feel deep in your hearts, is that we must, as the title of this video is, exit and build from unhealthy mindsets and from limiting beliefs. And that's what I want to focus on today, because I feel like, and I've seen this over the last 14 years that I've been doing this work, that there is a lack of attention paid to this detail. I'll just rant as we get into it. I could put out a video right now about Jeffrey Epstein, or I could put out a video about Prince Andrew, or about the Finders, or I could put out a video right now talking about technocracy and digital IDs and CBDCs, and that video would probably have a lot more viewers on it right now, because people are drawn to the drama. People are drawn to the train wreck. People want to stop and watch the car wreck. They don't want to stop and go to the gym and work out and get in good shape. That takes too much effort, too much time. I'd rather just hear about drama. I'd rather just listen to something that's going to affirm and confirm my biases and my beliefs. I don't know why many of us humans are like that, but it's a battle that I've seen as an independent journalist for over a decade now. It is very difficult to get people to pull in a lot of the people, especially those of you out there who might be hearing this, who consider yourselves, or whether you consider yourselves, you live as a black-pilled person, right? If the red pill wakes you up, the white pill is like an all hope all the time, overly optimistic. Black-pilled is like everything's screwed, nothing good can come of this earth, there's nothing we can do, right? I don't buy into either of those. We need to find the balance. We don't need to live in the extremes. No, the world is not perfect and there are a lot of injustices, but also things are not totally screwed and there are things we can do. So find the balance. Come in, and I invite you into this message to do a little bit of introspection of your own life and to figure out what are the unhealthy mindsets and limiting beliefs that you are currently carrying. This is something that I constantly internally try to reassess whenever I find myself acting in ways that don't really serve me, or where I show a side of myself to a loved one, or just even behavior that only I see, that I realize, well, that's totally not who I want to be seen as or how I want to represent myself. I can do better than that. How can I work on that? Let me strive to do that. So let me tell you some more about my story for those of you who haven't heard. I don't want to retell it for those who have, but I want to tell some pieces of the puzzle. So when I was 20 years old, I got addicted to drugs and I went to prison. It was back and forth. So I did a total of 18 and 19 months. Between November 2005 is the first time I got locked up. I got out September 2006. Then I went back February 2007. I got back out late May 2007. Then I went back June or July 2008 and got out October 2008 for the final time, and was now a felon, was out in the world, and my journey began, and eventually I got into activism, journalism, woke up, and all the fun stuff I've been doing. But prior to all that, when I was using drugs, like many of us in our lives who use drugs or alcohol or coffee or sex or gambling or TV or social media or anything to distract ourselves from the problems that we have, drugs were just a form of escapism for me. I would go out after working some job that I didn't really even like, and that felt like there was no future, there was no meaning. It's like, I'm just a cook at some restaurant. Am I going to do this for the rest of my life? I understand why a lot of people come away feeling hopeless. And then you get off work and it's just like, all right, I'm going to go buy a bottle of vodka and some cranberry juice and hang out with friends for a few hours and get drunk and then, try to pick up a chick, and then tomorrow I guess I'll start over and do it again. Like, you don't really see anything like on the horizon. Maybe you got like, oh, there's a concert coming up, or the holidays, or oh, I'm supposed to go on vacation in 6 months. Life tends to give you these kind of road marks to kind of landmarks to look at and say like, oh, I'll get there and then I'll experience some happiness. In the meantime, yeah, it's just going to be stressful and working a job and doing things I don't like. I get it. I understand why people turn to drugs, alcohol, etc. I did it. For me, though, it wasn't just boredom or a lack of purpose, although I think those were part of it. It was my trauma that I had from my lack of relationship with my father, him being in and out of my life since I was 4 or 5 years old, visiting him at prison, him coming home and making promises to be there for birthdays and Christmas and things like that, and then not showing up. And then as a little kid, trying to understand why that happened, and then eventually that why turned into like, I don't care why, I'm just angry, I'm just mad, like, he lied, he's not here, I guess everybody lies. And that anger eventually evolved into thinking that drugs were a way for me to escape that anger and sadness, and that I was almost invincible when I was on certain drugs. And so I can clearly see the pattern that led me to destructive behavior, led me to destructive thinking, that led to prison, and thankfully I had the ability to turn life around. But I share all that to say that a lot of my pursuit of drugs, or unhealthy sexual habits, or distractions of various kinds, I'm sure even at times like eating, I think eating is such a subtle way that we deal with our pain, because it's like, okay, if somebody's eating, you're not like, oh my God, dude, what are you doing? You're eating food. It's a little different if somebody's injecting drugs or smoking crack or something like that. It has a different image in our minds. But at the same time, many of us, we sad eat. You get upset about something, so you want to eat a bunch of food. You're angry, you want to eat a bunch of food. Or you're bored, you want to eat a bunch of food. Or you just start snacking for no reason. You don't even know why. You're not even sure if you're hungry. All these kinds of habits are things that we should inspect, and we should question, and we should interrogate. So for me, being that 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 7-year-old little boy who knew that something wasn't right. I knew that drugs were involved in my family's life. I've seen my uncles and other family members drunk around me since I was a little kid. I kept hearing my father was in prison for drugs. I didn't even know what they were. It made me start to, and I can't like pinpoint the moment when this happened. I just know, looking back, I know this is what happened. That at some point in those experiences, I started to internalize it and thought, well, maybe the drugs are more important than me, or maybe there's something wrong that I did. I don't even know what drugs are, but drugs are clearly important, because my dad, this guy that people keep telling me is supposed to be an important person in my life, keeps leaving based about something about these drugs that I keep hearing about. And I noticed, I think at the same time, like, hey, my uncle likes to drink beer and do these kind of things, and they sure seem happy and goofy, for at least for a little while when they're doing it. And then later at the end of the party, they're drunk and angry and everybody's screaming and fighting, and yeah, that's where it goes. But I think I kind of saw these things because, again, adults, friends out there, people who have kids, if you're a parent, your kids are picking up on everything you're doing around you. You cannot underestimate the information and the experiences that they're taking in, and the way that those are going to affect them and impact them. I'm not saying I know what's right or wrong. I'm just saying I know I was very observant, and adults often do not give children the credit they deserve for their ability to comprehend and understand the world around them, right? So as a young kid growing up around drug addicts and alcoholics, I developed a lot of unhealthy mindsets and limiting beliefs. And some of them, I think, were things like people are going to lie to you, everybody lies, that maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe that's why he didn't want to be home, or that's how I felt as a little kid. Now I know better as an adult, but maybe there's something wrong with me. And then, of course, I have brothers and sisters who are all internalizing this and dealing with this differently. And I think that those relationships, the sibling relationships as well, we each learned who we could lean on and who didn't want to talk about this, and how everybody was experiencing this. And some of those things I saw from my older brother and from other men in my life, I think taught me as a young kid that, like, you're not supposed to talk about painful things, and these things we kind of whisper about these things. And even now to this day, as I speak very openly about being a former drug addict and all the things I've gone through, I can sometimes see in people's faces, or their eyes light up whenever I mention, oh yeah, I used to be addicted to crystal meth. They look at me as if I'm supposed to be embarrassed, or if I should be ashamed, or I should, oh my God, he said that out loud. and I witnessed that with my father, and when I was younger, like seeing how drugs and these topics are there. There's a sense of shame. There's a sense of like, oh my God, yeah, we got a husband or an uncle or a father, and he's in prison for these drugs, and we talk about it in hushed tones, and we whisper about it. Nobody dares speak his name, and all these kind of things. And I think as a little kid, I internalized that, and I thought, okay, so there's some sense of shame here. Like my dad's did something wrong. These people, everybody's whispering about it. And then, of course, just the experience of going to visit a prison and see him and seeing him. I would see him, and I knew that this person was supposed to represent some positive figure in my life. So I would go run and jump on him and be happy to see him. But he'd have a black eye because he got into a fight recently, or a broken arm because he got into a fight recently. And different things that, I mean, I would hear the adults talking like, oh yeah, I got into a fight, or some guy came at me or whatever. And I'm just like, as a little kid, taking that in, like, okay, my dad's in here, this giant place with razor wire, and I can only see him for a little while. Sometimes I got to see him face to face and hold him and touch his hands. Other times it was just through the window. Sometimes it was just through the phone. All these experiences really fucked me up. I can just say that. I'm not telling anybody they shouldn't have taken me. I'm not telling you what to do if you've got a parent in prison and you're wondering whether you should take your kid. That's up to you. I'm just saying, I think looking back, these experiences definitely confused me. And if the adults had done a better job communicating and saying, hey, look, this is what's going on. Your father's doing this thing. And maybe they did. Maybe just don't remember. I'm not trying to put blame on anybody. I'm just saying I believe there was probably ways that this could be handled better. Unfortunately, it was handled the way it was. And I did develop unhealthy mindsets and limiting beliefs. And as I got older and I turned from being a sad, confused little kid, I started to, the sadness turned into really bad sadness, to where I started to like doing self-harm, like cutting myself in 6th to 7th grade. And, that just got worse as I got into high school and things like that. And then eventually after high school, or late high school, getting into drugs and alcohol. And before that, in high school, getting arrested, getting in fights, doing all this stuff. All of these things, I know they came from my feeling of thinking that I wasn't loved, thinking that I didn't deserve love, thinking that everybody was just out to screw you, and that there was no way that I could possibly experience that. Like I remember just the lenses that I had on, that I was looking at life through. I mean, shit, I can't even really take myself back there fully now, because it was such a sad place. And I hope that anybody out there hearing this, that if you are in that kind of feeling, that you can get through it. Because I definitely remember that, like waking up every day and feeling depressed as a kid, like just had a few friends that I felt like I could really connect with, but then other friends and people showed me that people, especially young teenagers, we're all going through shit. I don't hold it against anybody now, but I definitely had some friends that I thought I could trust turn their backs on me, or make fun of me when other cool kids were around. And eventually I developed these habits of wanting to be the class clown. I was the guy that people would come to and say, hey, here's a bunch of pieces of paper and books and random things. Go do something funny with it. And I'd go running down the hallway in high school, pretending I was chasing after somebody, yelling, and just only to like bust my ass and crash and burn. But I enjoyed that people were laughing. It felt like, okay, they care about me, or they're looking at me, they're paying attention to me. And I guess that came from something of like just wanting to have attention on me from my father not being there and things like that. I'm just kind of saying this stuff as it's coming out. So I hope you guys are enjoying this therapy session. But again, the point is getting out of these unhealthy mindsets and limiting beliefs. And I realize, as I've had time in the last 20 years to reflect on this, that I could see how much those early experiences shaped my desire for attention, shaped my desire to be liked, and to have friends, and also to accepting less than what I deserved, to putting up with shit that I didn't deserve, but because I didn't have the confidence to say, you know what, I do deserve love and attention, and I don't deserve to be talked that way. Or to have friends who communicate this way or that way, right? It took me a long time, and basically for me personally, it took going to prison, it took discovering meditation, starting with Zen Buddhism, then prayer, learning, my grandmother was a Christian kind of mystic, I guess you could say. She was into the esoteric Christianity, and she sent me books about prayer, and then of course my spiritual journey has continued on to connecting to my indigenous roots and doing things like Sundance and Sweat Lodge and prayer, and just learning in all these different ways. And that has allowed me to heal and to look deeper and to recognize that, hey, I am a powerful, beautiful, free person. And although I still have my moments of struggling with self-love, or even just like looking in the mirror sometimes, things like that, that might be something I deal with forever. But I know that I've overcome so many things, so many negative mindsets, limiting beliefs that have held me back in the past. I mean, like the person and the experience I have in this skull today is much different than it was even just 14 years ago, which doesn't seem that long ago because, I live here in the city of Houston. I remember when I first moved into the city, 2009, 2010, I was in a relationship. I was a year out of prison. I was the happiest I'd probably ever been at that time because just like, I'm free. This is finally over. Okay, but I don't have to pay any money. I don't have to go to probation. Like, I'm done. I'm happy. I'm excited about life. And it was in that space that I started to question the world around me and eventually read Ron Paul, read Rule by Secrecy, watched an Alex Jones documentary, and all these fun things that I've been doing. But the point was, in that space, I was finally able to find some self-love and some self-appreciation and to start just enjoying the sunset and enjoying the beauty of the world around me. And it was still not an easy thing, and I will say that I've learned a lot more lessons in that 14 years, even though I've been on this healing journey. I still made more mistakes, as we humans tend to do. I've still hurt people in ways that I wish that I didn't. I'm not saying that getting out of prison and ending my drug use, all of a sudden all my unhealthy beliefs and limiting mindsets just totally disappeared overnight, because it wasn't that way at all. I remember about a year and a half after getting out, and I was in a relationship, I was living in the city, and I remember still being consumed by this paranoia and like how much my mind can take over and just run with thinking that everybody's out to get me or everybody's going to screw me over if I don't remain in control. And I remember consciously having this experience, and maybe this is the advice here, where I had to grab a hold of my consciousness because my mind was racing and telling me that my partner at the time was probably screwing somebody else or doing this thing, and just all kinds of stuff. My boss is talking about me behind my back, and some of it was like I was kind of schizophrenic a little bit, but I think it was just I was coming out of that into that healing phase, and I was also starting to do meditation and ayahuasca and the prayer, and so all this stuff was coming up, and it was like I needed to deal with it. And I remember particularly being at work and just having that feeling and trying to call her and like couldn't get in touch with her and just being like, oh God, I know something's going on. I know something's going on. I can feel it. And it's just that racing. Oh my God, my head is about to explode. I got to go to the bathroom. I need to get away from everybody. What the heck's going on? And I had to like really just center myself, practice some of the meditation techniques, which were very new to me at that time, and just breathe and center myself and talk to myself and communicate to myself. And I know for some of you this sounds crazy, but you need to, I believe, or I recommend you communicate with yourself, your mind, your consciousness, your heart, your organs, your body. Like, sometimes we think of this as just one being, and if we're having a thought, then all the pieces of that being have got the thought and they understand it. But sometimes you need to consciously and say, hey, Derrick, inner child in there, that's part of the being of me. I need you to recognize, like, it's okay. We're working through that. Not everybody's going to do that same thing. I know you're trying to help me. I know ego, you're trying to pop up and you think you need to defend yourself or whatever, but I got this. We're okay. We're going to make it through this. If you guys need to sit in the back seat and just, close your eyes for a little while, do that. But I promise you we're going to be okay. Thank you for trying to help me, but you're no longer serving me. I need to be able to move forward with my life in a positive way. And to do that, I have to let go of those doubts. I have to let go of those fears. And I'm working on those insecurities. And that doesn't mean that's it, it's over, it's gone, it's done. But it does mean you are now back in the driver's seat. And when those feelings come up and when those moments arise, you can consciously communicate to yourself and say, okay, what's happening? I'm feeling a little bit insecure because we were out at a venue and my wife started talking to that guy over there, and I guess he's kind of handsome, he looks better than me, he's in better shape, and now I'm just feeling annoyed, and just whatever it is. And it can be the tiniest little things, especially when it comes to social media. So many times we are being influenced in negative ways by something we read on social media or on the internet. You might read an article or have an interaction with somebody online that just pisses you off and it makes you angry, and all of a sudden, you're clenching your jaw without realizing it. And then you're at work and then somebody asks you a question and you just like go off on them. Or you just carry that stress, that anxiety with you in the back of your mind or in your jaw the rest of the day, having no idea why you're feeling just a little bit aggravated and out, off your game, off your balance. And it could be something that you're carrying around from social media, from the internet, from something somebody said, from anything that you are choosing to not deal with. And the way you deal with it is you become conscious of it, you become aware of it. And for me, a lot of this has, come from writing things down in these notebooks. As you can tell, this one is very beat up because I carry it around everywhere. Writing things down and getting your thoughts out. It can be so useful. And I don't think I even do it as much as I used to. But I've been getting back to it, physically writing things down again, because I feel like even typing them on a computer isn't always the same effect of using my hand, my human hand, in a physical pen to write things down. And also I write very fast too, so I have to slow down to even understand my own writing. And that's part of the process too, slowing down and like, okay, let me really, don't just look at this as another task I need to check off and hurry up and get back to work, but let me stop and really think like, what do I need to get out? Why am I even doing this? Why am I making this video? Why am I writing these things down? Clearly, there's a part of me that needed to express this and to get these things out. I'm saying this both about the video and your hypothetical writing. So that's, I think, some of what I wanted to share. And I could go on about this. I don't want to get too ranty with this. I feel like I've made a few coherent points here, so maybe we'll start to wrap up. But I really want to encourage each of you to do these kind of things, to try to work to a level of self-awareness that you can become conscious of when you are getting aggravated, upset, angry, having negative beliefs about yourself, negative mindsets. And maybe for some of you, this sounds totally foreign. You're like, what do you mean? I'm the shit. I've never had a negative thought about myself in my life. While I would highly doubt that, and I think if you do a little digging, you'll find that they're in there too, I understand that some of us do have levels of confidence just naturally that others do not, and I would not put myself in that category. I'm a very good public speaker. I can communicate ideas, but really that all came about in the last 10 to 12 years of my life. I did not start out my activism extroverted and wanting to speak in front of people. I started out very quiet and mumbly and insecure and not confident. And it took effort and time and my belief in the things I'm sharing to feel like, you know what, even if I'm not feeling the best today, I got to get up there and I got to go share something. I need this to be expressed to people because it's important. So get over your little insecurities about what your face looks like or how you're feeling. Doesn't mean you shouldn't address those things and deal with them. I'm just saying sometimes you have to be willing to say, you know what, like let's step up to the plate and do this shit either way. Let's overcome things, because there's kind of a dichotomy there of either the people who say things like stop being a pussy and just man up and get things done, and I think there's a place for that, and others who say like, no, let's cater to our emotions all the time and let them guide us, and let's stop every day and just wallow in the emotions. And I get that, and I think emotions need to be dealt with, but I think there's also extreme versions of these, right? The extreme version of the stop being a wimp or whatever is you never deal with your emotions, so you ignore them all the time. And there's plenty of men and women, of course, but lots of men were discouraged from talking about our feelings or our emotions. So there's that extreme. And there's the extreme of people who are so lost in their emotions, and I consider myself to be this way in the past, so lost in their emotions that they kind of detach from physical reality in the world going around them. And then again, in my case, I use drugs as a way to kind of deal with that. The point is, though, neither of these extremes are helpful. I encourage you, and what the conscious resistance is about finding that balance. Just like we can't only focus on the physical realm, corporations, governments, tyranny, all kinds of horrible things we need to deal with and injustices we need to fight against. That's part of the equation, but we can't avoid what I'm talking about today, which is that internal tyrant, our doubts, fears, insecurities, and limiting beliefs. Because if we only focus on what's going on in the physical realm, and we only try to vote in a new mayor, or vote in a new president, or overthrow this government, or do this thing or that thing, we're still ignoring the most important quote unquote battlefield, and that is our internal world, right? I fully believe, and I've said this for years now, that if we were to create new systems of power, maybe we elect a new president or we get rid of the whole government and redesign some new amazing system, and we feel like we've won, if we do not do the internal work, within a couple of generations, we will cycle back and become the very same thing that we are fighting, because our egos will reassert themselves, our traumas will reassert themselves, and people will beat people and will become tyrannical and power will corrupt. I think we do need a conscious evolution, a conscious resistance in order for us to ever truly create a world where there could be a world without government, which is what I believe in. I believe that human beings are capable of living without government. I don't think we're there at the present moment. But I am an anarchist and I fight towards that day. I'm a spiritual anarchist who believes that the way we get to the place of most freedom of a voluntary society with consensual and voluntary relationships is by each individual doing their best job to work on their own trauma and encouraging those around them to do the same. And as we each collectively do that, we will create the better world where things like governments are no longer necessary. That is my belief. And to do that, we got to work on our own shit. So, and this is the title of a video I did probably a decade ago, for the good of everyone, focus on yourself. And I still believe that very strongly. It's not an egotistical or selfish thing to do to work on yourself. In fact, if more of us spent our time working on ourselves rather than poking at other people in their lives and worrying about what everybody else is up to, we'd probably be in a lot better situation. So that is this presentation, Exit and Build from Unhealthy Mindsets and Limiting Beliefs. I really want to encourage you guys to rewatch this, to listen to it again, because like I said, this was just, I've had this idea percolating in my mind for a couple of months now, and I just decided to go with it. I didn't really have any particular plan. That's how I like to do these videos, and I'm going to show you guys right now as we wrap up. If you enjoyed this video, there are plenty more like this on our website, theconsciousresistance.com. If you go there and click on our categories here, you can scroll down a little bit, you'll see categories, explore more topics. You can see this topic, where is that? Motivational, right here. Motivational, this includes all the videos I've done like this for the last 10 years that are similarly minded. Some of them are just straight stream of consciousness. Some of them are motivational in presentations and things of that sort. But if you want things like this, if you want more than just my reports on the scary news and the bad things happening, then I encourage you, for one, to comment below. Let me know you'd like to hear more of these kinds of talks, and to go back and see all of the talks I've done that are motivational and more inspiring over the last decade plus. And I very much appreciate that. I would invite you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com to our work once a week at least. We have lots of new things coming up, including more talks like this, guys. So with all that said, thank you for giving me some time to share this. I really do hope you take this message in. I hope you work on your limiting beliefs and your unhealthy mindsets and exit from them, so we all can exit and build a new paradigm full of voluntarism and respect for bodily autonomy and individual liberty and freedom of expression and healthy mindsets and healthy relationships with our friends and family and the people we care about. That is what I'm working towards, and I hope you will join me. Until next time, guys, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.